Yeah. So I guess the thing that most interests me, having known your previous books, is like this one is pretty different, which
Very
is
different.
great. Like it's very healthy to see, in a writer, but a publisher obviously has an interest in kind of building a niche for a writer and having you be successful in that way. Was it difficult to move from New England to Dallas Detectives?
In some ways, yes. And in some ways, it was easy because I grew up in Dallas. I was
Yeah.
very familiar with the city, although it's changed dramatically since I returned in 2000. I had lived and worked in New York for many years. And a lot of the changes were for the good.
Mhm.
But a lot of the changes, of course, are like every other big city. New York, Boston, Chicago, we have drugs, we have prostitution, we have human trafficking. And so Dallas has had a difficult time coming to terms with that split in its personality. Um, and that split, that disjointed culture really fascinated me. So I did spend quite a bit of time writing three historical works, fiction works. And the way it's the same is that I still had to do research. I still had to do background development of characters, building a story for them, following the arc of the narrative. But it was very different in a lot of fundamental ways. The tone and the pacing are completely different.
Yeah.
It's the pacing of this contemporary crime book, The Dime, is very fast paced. It's very urgent. The dialogue, of course, is contemporary. It's not seasoned with colloquial speech that you might find with people that spoke 100 or 200 years ago. So rhythmically, it's very contemporary. And it was also kind of a blending of how Dallas copes with its past. It's still in love with the cowboy. It's still in love with its Confederate reenactors. So there's a nostalgia and a longing for the good old days. And yet we have everything that a modern city has. We have world-class museums. We finally have sidewalks because we have street life now. We have more of a cafe society. We have a burgeoning literary scene here. But Dallas is very uncomfortable and I think embarrassed with its rustic roots. For example, we have more churches per capita than any other city in the country. I think now we have more plastic surgeons than Beverly Hills. So we're putting on a good face, so to speak. So this tension, this duality really fascinated me. And even though I was working on historical fiction, in the back of my mind, I thought someday I want to do a modern tale of crime, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but set it in modern times. I also have members of my own family who are in law enforcement, and that's it's kind of a closed society. Dallas has less women on the force than a lot of other national police forces. So the idea of being a woman on the Dallas police force was also interesting to me. How did they cope with that?
Yeah. But so, I mean, if you weren't, if you didn't have to research for this book, how people spoke all those years ago, what were you spending your time researching? Like the ins and outs of a detective's life and work, or?
In some ways, this was the most challenging book to research because usually historians and genealogists love to talk. You ask them a question and then just let them go. Active duty police officers, especially undercover police, do not talk about their work, and for very good reason. They have to protect their sources. They have to protect one another. I'm a civilian. So it was very difficult for me to get cases. I had to look at crime reports, the daily sheets, where the crime was committed, go to newspaper sources like the Dallas Morning News and read true crime stories. And a lot of those stories are stranger than fiction anyway. You get someone who lives in an insular society, pumps them with drugs and alcohol, and they're going to do some pretty strange things. Right. So I wanted to, paint an accurate picture, but it took me a long time to feel confident that what I was writing about was an accurate portrayal of undercover police. My best success was researching and talking to retired policemen, policewomen, and I had the very good fortune to talk to a woman who was the very first, I think she was the first one to get her detective shield in the mid-1970s in the Dallas Police Department. So she told me some hair-raising stories about how difficult her life was joining the police force. But once she was retired, she was able to tell me a lot about how things worked procedurally.
Oh, that's great. And so I understand it's going to be a trilogy or maybe just a series. How did you, you do have a really interesting protagonist, but that's a chunk of your life. Like when did it become apparent to you that you knew that you wanted to spend more time with this character and that you were sort of willing to kind of live with her for a while instead of just one book?
And that's a very important question, because you invest so much time, so many emotional resources in developing a character. And this character was developed for a short story. It was called Coincidences Can Kill You, and it was in Dallas Noir. It was a crime anthology. And I honestly thought when I did the story, I've always wanted to write a crime piece of fiction. And I thought that maybe this was just a one-off, that this was one and done. But after living with the story for a while, the character of Detective Betty Rizek just wouldn't leave me alone. Most of my female protagonists are very strong-willed. They're very independent, and they often fall outside of the boundaries of a lot of times what is proper or appropriate for a woman to do. And certainly in my first 3 novels, the women in those books were quite fierce. In fact, my grandmother used to say there are no such things as witches, just ferocious women. And I love the fact that Betty Rizek was a ferocious woman. She is a cop from a family of cops, Polish cops from Brooklyn. I love the idea that she wasn't Italian or Irish. I wanted to make her something a little different, more exotic. I love to give my characters a lot of friction and challenges right off the bat. So here she is. She's a Yankee from Brooklyn. She moves to Dallas. She is physically very, very imposing. She's 6 feet tall, flaming red hair, a Yankee. She's a lesbian. And yet here she is joining the police force in Dallas, Texas. And so she had quite a few obstacles to overcome, but she is a ferocious woman. And I thought it would be so much fun to plumb those depths, to set this outsider, this really exotic Amazon, against the Confederate reenactors or the Mexican cartel members. It goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. And you could live in Texas for 100 years and never completely mine all of the weird and wonderful stories that Texas has to offer.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, we will get this ready. This is perfect.
Good.
Thank you so much. And it looks like you're going to be with us in San Antonio.
Yes, in April. I'm really looking forward to that. I saw the announcement today, and you've got some incredible writers.
Oh,
just
thanks.
an amazing lineup.
Yeah, it's nice to you know, I love being back in journalism at Kirkus, but you know, it's essentially putting on a big party, and writers don't get invited to a lot of parties. So I love
Right.
that aspect of it. So, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're bringing the Moth to San Antonio for the first
Yes.
time.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so we'll comp you a ticket if you want to go to that.
Fantastic.
And we do some parties during the weekend. So stick around and we'll have some fun.
Oh, it looks like so much fun. And I have to tell you, Clay, that I've been to a lot of historical novel conferences,
Mm-hmm.
and crime writers are much more fun. They have a generosity of spirit. They have a wicked sense of humor, and they are much more fun at a party, I must say.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, we found two to put on a panel with you, so I think you'll have a lot of fun.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Clay, for this opportunity. And it was great seeing you, and I look forward to seeing you in April at the conference.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too, Clay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.